In this segment, we're going to look at how imperial competition affected European settlement and exploration of the New World. We've already discussed the Treaty of Tordesillas and how the Portuguese really took a firm hold of present-day Brazil. We're going to turn our attentions north and westward into Mexico and the American Southwest and focus more exclusively on American history, starting with Cortés. The exploits of Hernán Cortés are probably what precipitated the most amount of migration from the Spanish to the New World over the period of 100 years following Christopher Columbus's initial discovery. Hernán Cortés was the Spanish conqueror who defeated the Aztecs. Near present-day Veracruz, Mexico, Cortés made his final landfall, and he determined to capture the capital city of the Aztec people, Tenochtitlan. Aztec leader Montezuma welcomed Cortés as a living god. He mistook him for Quetzalcoatl, a god within the Aztec religion who was said to have had fair skin and sailed upon the seas on a raft of billowing clouds. You could see perhaps how the sails of a ship and the glinting of the silver armor the Spanish wore would have been quite the scene for Aztecs to behold. What happened to break down the relationship between the Aztecs and Cortés is somewhat of a controversy, depending on the history you look at. According to the Spanish historians, the Aztecs attacked Cortés on Noche Triste, or the Sad Night, on June 30th, 1520, upset with him and wanting to drive the Spanish out of the city. From the Aztec perspective, the Spanish attacked and killed Montezuma and then turned on the Aztec people during a night of celebration. At any rate, within a couple of months, Cortés had laid siege to the city, and the Aztecs were forced to capitulate, meaning they were forced to surrender. The casualties of warfare were minimal, but during that initial exposure, the first 2 months of exposure to the Spanish, the Aztecs were devastated by a smallpox outbreak, and that is really what ultimately forced them to surrender. The Spanish destroyed Tenochtitlan, and in fact, the present capital of Mexico is built on the remains or the ruins of that famous Aztec city. At or near the same time as Cortés's exploration of Mexico and conquest of the Aztecs, other famous explorers from Spain and Portugal made their mark on the history of the New World. Explorers such as Balboa, who became the first European to touch the Pacific Ocean on the western part of North America near the Isthmus of Panama. In 1519, a Portuguese explorer by the name of Magellan rounded the tip of South America, becoming the first European to cross from the Atlantic to the Pacific by a water route. Between 1513 and 1521, Ponce de Leon explored Florida. Legend has it that Ponce de Leon was after the Fountain of Youth, but historical fact would show that he was, like other Spanish explorers, after gold and silver. Finding neither gold nor silver nor the Fountain of Youth, Ponce de Leon's biggest claim to fame is that he settled the oldest settlement in the United States, St. Augustine, Florida, in 1565. Other explorers would make their mark later in the 16th century. Explorers such as Coronado, who we've discussed previously, explored the American Southwest in search of golden cities. Much to his disappointment, he discovered mud adobes of the Pueblo Indians that reflected golden in the setting sun. Much like Coronado, Hernando de Soto traversed southeastern part of present-day United States through states like Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. While he did map out the southern portion of the Mississippi River, he lost his life in the pursuit, but at the hands of men who mutinied against him. The men dumped his body over the sides of their boats to avoid confrontation with hostile Indian groups that had been affronted by De Soto previously on their trip. As the 16th century came to a close, Spain had established itself as the premier colonial power in the New World and was quickly gaining on Portugal as a dominant power of Europe. Other European nations turned their attention to the New World in hopes of duplicating Spain's success. At the very tail end of the 15th century, England sent its first explorer, Giovanni Caboto, to the New World to explore the northeastern coast of North America. The French, too, tried to join the game. Giovanni de Verrazano probed the eastern part of Canada near Newfoundland and Nova Scotia in 1524. And in 1534, Jacques Cartier journeyed up the St. Lawrence River, claiming all that territory to the Great Lakes in the name of the King of Spain. While it would be nearly another 150 years before the French would send Robert de La Salle down the Mississippi River to proclaim it for the King of France, the Spanish began to feel the competition from its Old World enemies. And so it set out to secure its northernmost territory with a series of military and religious missions. These Spanish settlements competed fiercely with the native people in those regions. This conflict culminated at the end of the 16th century with the Battle of Acoma. In it, the Spanish defeated the Pueblo and established a new territory known as New Mexico, with a capital at Santa Fe. The Catholic faith was equally important in establishing a Spanish foothold in the northern part of Spanish territory, which is part of the new southwestern territory of the United States. Catholic missions attempted to convert native people to the Christian faith. This map demonstrates Spanish settlement in present-day United States. Those locations that are marked with a red dot and a cross were Catholic missions established by Father Junipero Serra around between 1769 and 1823. The first Catholic mission in California was established in San Diego, and the chain wound up the coast to Sonoma. The natives of New Mexico eventually would regather and retaliate against Spanish invasion. In 1680, during Pope's rebellion, the Pueblo destroyed every Catholic church in the province and killed a score of priests and hundreds of Spanish settlers. In a kind of reversal of Cortez's treatment of the Aztecs, the Indians rebuilt their religious temple on the ruins of the Spanish Plaza at Santa Fe. It would take nearly 50 years before the Spanish fully reclaimed New Mexico from the insurrection Indians. As I mentioned before, the presence of the French would eventually put pressure on the Spanish. And when we get to the turn of the 19th century, so the 1800s, we will see kind of horse trading between the French and the Spanish over what became known as the Louisiana Territory. What's important to remember from this unit is that Spanish success and dominance in the New World motivated other empires to try to replicate that experience. The Spanish, in an effort to secure their control, fortified the northern part of its territory in present-day southwestern United States. Native populations were abused by the Spanish and tried to resist their efforts to encroach with limited success.